Hi, folks, for Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the furor and the eruption of I don't know, hand wringing and chewing of fingernails and so on about President Trump's expressed desire to make sure that museums in the United States accurately reflect the slavery period, what happened, and how slavery fits into the history of the world and so on. Now, currently, the narratives are extremely narrow. Firstly, it's white guilt only. Slavery is uniquely a white thing that only white people ever did to black people. It's white supremacy, it's fascism, it's Nazis, it's Hitler, it's it's all of this rolled into one, and they're very determined to sort of hold on to that narrative. So any threat to that historically inaccurate, by the way, any threat to that narrative is something that they're prepared to fight back on, and to do so they have to ignore, of course, the facts. Now, no one's saying that slavery is a good thing. But this idea that it was uniquely white on black, or something, or only white people did it, or this sort of thing is beyond absurd. It's an outrageous and grotesque untruth. But it's something they have to hang on to if they're going to make the narrative work, which is it's all white guilt. And the reason black people don't do well in the world is only because of those damn white oppressors. Very much mirrors the Jewish Marxist take on, victim and oppressor and that sort of stuff. But just coming to, I was looking at, there's been an explosion of talk shows, and there's quite a photogenic black chick who was doing doing a talk show, and she had like an intro segment of about 8 minutes, and so I was counting off the lies and the omissions that were in there, and there was no attempt to be accurate at all, which was annoying, because her claim is that, well, Trump's doing this and he's wrong and he's inaccurate. We are the ones that are custodians of the absolute truth, not him. And we're going to tell you the truth now. And all she did was trot out one lie after another. Now, she doesn't sound too bright, the black chick. So someone else would have scripted it, and she's just a talking head. I don't think she understands what day it is, really. But nonetheless, I'll go through some of the things here. Firstly is that she frames it that only white people ever did the slavery thing, and they uniquely enslaved black people. So that's not true. Slavery's been around for thousands of years. White people came quite late to the party on the slavery thing. The idea that the only enslavement that ever went on in the world was white people enslaving black people, that's a lie. It's simply not true. Not even tiny true, not even little bubby itsy bitsy true. It's an outrageous and terrible lie. So why do they keep on pushing that? So then just a little sort of drop at the end was white people did it for profit, which comes back to the Marxist thing. The next thing is that black people built America. It was the ingenuity of the blacks that built America. Okay, then let's explore that possibility. Why is it therefore that the entire African continent was a basket case, with most of them not having the wheel, not having a written language, and no buildings of why is it that there was the Arab side of Africa over in the east? They had buildings and written language there, but outside of that, they were living as hunter-gatherers as they had 10,000 and whatever years before. So this idea that the ingenuity of black people built America is beyond absurd. Now, if you look at the structures that were built in America, and none of those things existed in Africa. So it clearly wasn't black ingenuity that was doing it. You can switch, well, it was black laborers. They were just doing the grunt work, where the white sort of overseas and say, well, move that from there to there. That doesn't mean that blacks built America. Far from it. The subset argument of that is, well, blacks weren't paid to do that. therefore they gave their labor for free, therefore they built America because the white people benefited. Well, the black people benefited too. All the houses that they lived in, the clothes that they wore, the food that they ate, that's all sort of brought about by white people. If you look at the famines and diseases and deaths in Africa, and then the deaths when those same people moved to America, the 50% death rate that you would get in Africa, this is at birth, was down to sort of half that in the New World. So let's have a little bit of perspective on that, if you don't mind. The next thing is that she claims white people directly enslaved black people. That's not true. That's not even a tiny bit true. The blacks were enslaving each other and had done for thousands of years. The people were already enslaved when they were brought to the West African ports. Now, the claim was that the blacks were selected for slavery in the West African ports rather than were buying agents when they came to the United States for auction. Whilst there's some evidence there might have been some auctions in the West African thing, the auctions didn't really take place till they got to America, or the Americas. This is pre the United States, and in the initial stages at least. So these are facts that they conveniently come. Now, imagine if the presenter said, and blacks who were already enslaved by other blacks were then taken to the Americas. That would be a very different narrative that would then come out of that. But they don't do that. They claim that the blacks were directly enslaved by the white people, who just somehow magically appeared and then all these blacks that were all in the coastal ports there along West Africa were just enslaved at that. That's not true. Again, that's not even a tiny bit true. Also, they claim that whites were rampaging around the length and breadth of Africa, just rando grabbing any black dude they saw. That's not true. It was, again, the blacks were enslaving each other. The logistical machine and the cost of it to go into the interior of Africa would have been impossible. It just would have been unworkable. So that's simply not true. Now, the emotive language that again, it's been scripted by activists, so what do you expect? But the emotive language and the black people were then put in chains that ripped the skin from their bodies, causing pain. Little babies with chains around them, skin ripped from the little baby. No, stop. That is purposefully emotive language to try and gin it all up. Now, the other, one of the other lies, one of many, by the way, every few seconds another lie was uttered, was a claim that black people were, and there was a little image came up on the screen, that black people were stuffed in the ships like sardines. Now, these trips, depending on the weather, these trips could take a couple of months. So if you've got people packed in that tight, and according to the narrative, they're being starved and whipped and beaten and so on and so forth, and they can't leave, and they don't get any fresh air, and so this claim is complete and utter nonsense. Yet another lie. Again, if it's so bad, you don't need lies. You don't need your lies. The facts will be enough, but they have to resort to lies and ridiculous emotive language. Slaves were beaten and chained, and so many died. Hold on. The only way the ship's going to make any money, their job, the ship, their job, their purpose, if you will, is to deliver healthy, ready to work, and this is heavy work. They're not just going to do light duties or something. Oh, some would, like cooking in the kitchen, but they're supposed to be there for heavy work on the farms and the plantations and the agricultural stations and so on, and they have to be ready to work. But the buyers at the auctions, they want fit slaves that are ready to work right now, today. I want to take this guy and go to my farm, or the plantation, and say, okay, do this. And so I don't want to have to wait 6 months or a year to get the guy back to health. I don't want to get a guy who's so ill that he's going to die 5 minutes after, by tomorrow he's going to be dead. So, I don't want any of that. So the price that you would get for a slave it meant that they had to be in tip-top condition, otherwise no chance. And there was a lot of things that the slave had to do. You know, the buying agent would say, okay, you have to jump up and down, you have to run, you have to, you know, hop on one leg, or and so on. Unless the guy could demonstrate that he was, fully fit and ready to work, then you wouldn't get anywhere near the price. And there were quite a few slaves there that if they weren't in good health, nobody would buy them. Nobody would give even $1 for them. Now, what the slave ship guys didn't want was to have to keep the when the ship got to the Americas at the other end, or the Caribbean, it didn't matter. Is get the slaves out and have to feed them and give them a very good quality diet, give them medical care, and get nice clothes for them to wear, all this sort of stuff. Because you have the cost of doing that, just the security alone, food, the medical care, all that sort of stuff, that's really expensive, and that's eating into your profits. You're not going to make squat if you've got to go through that. So this idea that the slaves were packed in and treated badly, whipped and beaten and starved, and so, that's bullshit. The absolute, total, utter bullshit. It's a complete lie. Unless they got 2/3 of the slaves arriving in tip-top condition at the other end, the journey wouldn't really make anything money. Remember, they got to pay for the ship and the crew and this and that. So they can't afford that. It just can't. The slaves have to arrive in condition, ready to do. That's the whole purpose, by the way. The slaves are being brought in as labourers. They're not being brought as slaves to be oppressed, and it's race and it's class and it's oppression and it's swastikas. It's nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with that. It's just bringing in a labour force that you have no other way of getting. That's all it is. It's not enslavement in the sense of evil, what do you do to black people, oppression. It's not that. Not at all. It's bringing a workforce into in this case, agricultural work. So they had to arrive in tip-top condition. That's another lie. Also, the lie that they were enslaved by white people because of some unique sense of white supremacy. Well, what about when the Arabs did it? Well, they're brown, so that kind of doesn't really count. When other blacks enslave each other, that doesn't really count either. It's only bad if white people do it. But the white people weren't the ones doing the enslaving, so that needs to be said. Now, we see that attitude today, even in the United States or elsewhere around the world, wherever the globalists have their clammy hands, you particularly see it. And this is where, if in these inner city shootouts, like in Baltimore or Chicago and these places, in the black ghettos, you can have as much as 20 or 30 shootings or more in just a weekend. 20 people can be shot in one, black people, but it's black people shooting each other, and for some reason, nobody seems to really care about that. Black people shooting each other, who cares? But if a white person shoots a black people, let's get onto this. It's an international headline. Why isn't an international headline if a black guy shoots a black guy? Why isn't that a headline? Still murder, isn't it? It's still a shooting. Somebody still died. But why does that not warrant a headline or warrant the same? It's only a headline if it's a white guy that does the shooting. And black guys are shooting each other, at the rate of 100 to 1 of what the white guys are. So why are we tolerating, as in a community or society, why do we just shrug our shoulders and accept black people shooting each other is okay? But it's only bad if a white guy does it. Same with slavery, it's only bad if the white guy is involved with it. Everyone else can do it, and that's fine. That sort of attitude, that sort of crazy one-eyed perspective makes them the racists, not the white people, surely. So I could go on here picking apart the thing. When the blacks working on the farms that were starved and beaten and humiliated, and again the ginned up language, and slaves whose dignity was ripped from them, ripped out of their bodies, ripped out of their soul. No, stop the ginning up, stop the emotive language here. That's bullshit. All right, just stop it. But if black people killed white people because the white people had it coming to them, the damn assholes. So So this continues on. The farmers or the plantation owners get a bunch of slaves. This is according to the narrative that the black chick's pushing. Gets a bunch of slaves to do the work that needs to be done on the farm, and then proceeds to starve and kill them all. Gee, that'll get the work done. Wow. So you've just paid serious money to get these slaves. First thing you want to do is starve them and kill them and beat them. Yeah, that really fits. Of course, that's bullshit. They need these workers. They need these people to do work. Not that there wouldn't have been brutality, and the mates said that all of them were being whipped and whipped. That's not true. They had to turn up for work, able to work. If you're whipping and starving someone, they're not going to be able to do any work. Then you got medical care. You don't want to die. You've just put a lot of money into buying them. So the medical care that the slaves are getting is pretty decent, because you want the worker back to work. That's why you've got them there. So this idea that they were being beaten and killed off in his hordes is bullshit. But no one's pushing back on this. President Trump is pushing back, but it's fine to have slavery happened. It's a historical fact. No need to deny it or sweep it under the carpet or something. But it is. For example, if you walk into say a museum exhibition that mentions slavery has been an institution in existence for many thousands of years. It was white people that put an end to slavery. And it's only white people today that don't do slavery. America did do part of, it was involved in slavery by blacks that were enslaved by other blacks and then sold to the white people in an already enslaved condition, and then brought to the Americas as a workforce, given the inability of whites and the local Indians to handle the disease. And so if you had it like that would be accurate and true. But it takes the bite out of this evil white supremacy, Hitler. It takes a huge bite out of that narrative. In fact, the narrative would be unsustainable at that point. And as I understand, at least, that's the sort of even-handed, accurate historical description of slavery that I believe, if I've understood it correctly, that President Trump and his team want to have, and quite reasonably want to have, in all the museums in the United States, and the narrative that should be there and what should be taught to school children. But the idea only white people did it and white people are uniquely evil and this and that, that has to go. The social disruption it causes gives benefit to nobody and causes great harm to everybody. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.